Good morning and welcome to the Killik and UK market update. There was lots of focus yesterday on the autumn budget, especially given the volatility that we had in markets following September's mini-budget. Lots of the measures from yesterday's budget had been leaked in advance, so there weren't really any major surprises, and actually markets responded fairly well to Jeremy Hunt's speech. Quite a good way to measure the response of the market is to look at the value of the pound. Following the mini-budget in September, the pound dropped to a record low of 1.03 against the dollar. In the weeks following that mini-budget, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt were appointed, and they collectively reversed most of that mini-budget, and that led to a recovery in the pound. Prior to the budget speech yesterday, the exchange rate was about 1.19, and it ended the day with very little change. That said, the long-term trend of the pound against the dollar is sadly a downward one. Here's the 50-year chart, which I think is a good argument for investing globally rather than just investing in the UK. The content of the budget was shared with the OBR, or the Office for Budget Responsibility, prior to yesterday's speech, which enabled the OBR to include the new measures in their latest economic forecasts. Here are their GDP forecasts. The yellow line shows what they were forecasting back in March. But in their report, they do acknowledge that the picture has worsened since the March forecasts were put together. So the GDP forecasts have now been revised downwards, as shown by those blue lines. The dotted blue line shows the predictions prior to yesterday's budget measures, and the solid line shows them afterwards. So you can see that the measures are expected to have a positive impact on the short-term picture. There were lots of different key takeaways from yesterday's budget, but two of the main ones for investors were the reductions in the capital gains allowance and the dividend allowance. So please do give us a call if you'd like to talk about how you can make the most of these before the changes come in at the start of next tax year. Another new measure from yesterday's budget was a new windfall tax on electricity generators. As soon as this was mentioned by Jeremy Hunt, we did see share prices weakening across the sector. Here's an intraday share price chart for SSE. The share price is shown by the blue line, and you can see it dropped sharply around midday when the windfall tax was first mentioned, but then it rose steadily throughout the day as analysts were able to digest the detail of the windfall tax. The design of the tax is quite complex, but on close inspection, it's not as bad as many had feared. Renewable generators actually finished the day in positive territory, so please do give us a call if you'd like to talk about this new windfall tax in a bit more detail. And finally this week, the latest inflation numbers for the UK have been published, and the headline rate of inflation came in at 11.1%, which was slightly higher than expectations. The bars on this chart show the overall level of inflation, which you can see has risen steadily since 2020. The colours show what is causing that inflation. The pink shows housing and housing services, including energy, and the purple shows food. And these, at the moment, are the key contributors to inflation here in the UK. The OBR published some inflation predictions in yesterday's report. They used slightly different colours for their categories, purple for food and green and red for gas, electricity and fuel. But overall, as you can see by the chart, they think we're at peak inflation and that it will start to fall sharply from next year. It's worth contrasting this with the inflation in the US, which we touched on last week. Here's the chart again, and you can see that inflation in the US peaked in June and that it has been in decline since then. Looking ahead to next week, it's actually looking quite quiet on the corporate calendar, and we haven't got results due out from any companies on the Killik and Co covered list. That leaves me to wish you a very happy weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday.